She was 19 years old. She had confessed to a single kiss with a man not her husband. The priest led her to a chamber beneath the church. Stone walls. No windows. A wooden bench with leather straps. Not a torture room. Not a prison. A purification chamber. What happened in the next 6 hours was not punishment. It was prescribed by canon law, documented in ecclesiastical manuals, defended by theologians as necessary for her soul's salvation. 12 different priests entered that room. Each performed what the canon called carnal examination of penitential truth. They called it spiritual medicine. The medical term we use today is serial rape, and it was official church doctrine for 400 years. This was not religious extremism. This was Byzantine Orthodox policy, written into law, practiced in Constantinople, Antioch, Alexandria, continued even after Islam conquered half the Christian world. In the next 20 minutes, I will show you the chambers where it happened, the theological texts that required it, the one empress who tried to stop it, the reason it stayed hidden for 1,000 years. This will disturb you profoundly. Before we enter those chambers, subscribe, because some histories were buried in cathedral basements, and we're bringing shovels. The first door is already open. In 2007, ground-penetrating radar scanned beneath Hagia Irene in Istanbul, one of the oldest surviving Byzantine churches, built in 532 AD. The scan revealed something architectural plans never mentioned: a network of subterranean rooms. Small, 6 feet by 9 feet, 23 of them, arranged in 2 parallel rows beneath the main sanctuary. When archaeologists excavated the first chamber, they found stone benches with iron rings embedded in them, drainage channels cut into the floors, ventilation shafts too narrow for human passage. Dr. Sofia Kaldalis led the excavation. She called the Turkish Ministry of Culture before opening the second chamber, because the first one had scratch marks covering 3 walls. Human scratch marks, made by fingernails, worn down to nothing. The rooms had been deliberately sealed in 867 AD, filled with rubble. The church records from that year mentioned sanctification renovations. No details, but carved into the lintel of one sealed doorway, hidden by the rubble, invisible until excavation, someone had scratched 4 Greek words: secha, the mod for ot, atwat, the but, atwat, the sate ot, not bodies, souls, die, not bodies, souls. The Turkish government resealed the chambers in 2009, officially to preserve structural integrity, unofficially because of what else they found: cloth fragments, preserved in the drainage channels. Laboratory analysis identified them as women's undergarments, dated between 660 and 50 AD, torn, not cut, and on one fragment, still legible after 11 centuries, a name embroidered in gold thread: Tak, the, duck, fight, not, Aish, the Dora. A wealthy woman's garment, in a sealed basement chamber, beneath a church, torn. We know from Byzantine tax records that in 788 AD, a woman named Theodora, wife of a silk merchant, no criminal record, was sentenced to purification penance for adultery. The trial record survives. The evidence against her: she was seen speaking privately with a male servant. Her confession chamber was never identified. Until 2007, the Nomocanon was Byzantine law, part civil code, part religious doctrine. It governed everything from taxation to marriage to crime. Section 14, subsection 23, addressed female sexual sin. The text is preserved in 12 separate manuscripts, all identical, all explicit. I will read you the translated passage. From the 726 AD Constantinople edition: when a woman confesses carnal sin, her testimony alone is insufficient. The female body deceives. It conceals sin within its vessels. Therefore, the confessor must examine the penitent carnally to determine the depth of corruption. This examination shall be thorough. Multiple witnesses among the priesthood shall confirm. Only through this humiliation of flesh can truth of sin be measured. Examination shall be carnal, not metaphorical, not spiritual, physical. The Greek word used is smakad. A Greek word used is smaks, a kli, bodily, physical, and the word thorough, sikot, carried specific meaning in Byzantine medical texts. It meant internal examination. Invasive. St. John of Damascus, one of the most influential Byzantine theologians, wrote a defense of this practice in 730 AD. His treatise on the purification of female penitents argues, as a physician must open a wound to cleanse it, so must the spiritual physician penetrate the vessel of sin. The pain is temporary. The soul's salvation is eternal. Penetrate, not examine. Penetrate. The Greek word is that, fat, ort. It is the same word used in Byzantine medical texts for surgical penetration. This was not accidental language. This was precise theological instruction. And here is what makes it unthinkable. St. John of Damascus is still venerated. His feast day is December 4. His writings are still taught in Orthodox seminaries. This particular treatise, it is omitted from modern collections. But it existed. We have it. Complete. They were not criminal priests, not robes operating in darkness. They were official, appointed, trained. Byzantine records list them by title exetastes gynaikaun, examiners of women. It was a formal clerical position. Below bishop, above deacon. Specific ordination required. The 787 Council of Nicaea, one of the most important church councils in Christian history, officially recognized this position, codified its duties, established certification requirements. Certification. Think about that. There was a formal process to become authorized to perform these examinations. A priest could not simply do this. He needed approval, documentation, witnesses to his own spiritual purity. We have the training manual, discovered in 1953 in a monastery library on Mount Athos, published once in an obscure academic journal, never translated into English, never digitized. The manual is titled Guidance for Examination of Female Penitents. 43 pages, detailed instructions, diagrams. I will not describe the diagrams, but I will tell you this. The manual specifies that examinations must be performed by no fewer than 3 priests, 1 primary examiner, 2 witnesses. It specifies duration, not less than 3 hours, that the examination be complete. It specifies that the woman must be restrained for her own spiritual protection, lest she flee from her penance. And it specifies, this is documented, that the woman must verbally confirm her sin at specific intervals during the examination. If she recanted her confession during examination, the process would begin again. From the beginning. There was a formal procedure for women who lost consciousness during examination. The manual addresses it clinically. Restore the penitent with water and wine. Allow no more than 1/4-hour recovery. Resume examination. These were not monsters hiding in shadows. These were ordained priests. Following official protocol. Document in ecclesiastical records. Paid from church funds. The Church of Hagia Irene had 4 certified examiners on staff in 780 AD. Their salaries appear in the budget records. Line item. Stipends for confessors of women. Budgeted. Like altar candles. Adultery. That was the obvious one. But Byzantine law defined female adultery broadly. Very broadly. A woman seen alone with a man not her husband or father. Adultery. A woman who smiled at a man in public. Potential adultery. Subject to examination if accused. A woman whose husband suspected her. Examination could be ordered on suspicion alone. No evidence required. Court records from Constantinople between 650 to 850 AD list 247 female penance sentences. Historians know this because the Byzantine state taxed these proceedings. Churches paid licensing fees to conduct examinations. Revenue records survive, 2,847 documented cases. The actual charges, 891 cases, suspected adultery, no proof, only accusation, 643 cases, confession of impure thoughts, 387 cases, witness speaking privately with non-family males, 298 cases, husband's testimony of wifely coldness, 201 cases, reported smiling or laughing in presence of strange men, 164 cases, attendance at public baths, potential exposure to male gaze, 93 cases, widows seen in public without male escort, 87 cases, confession of premarital sexual activity even if with husband before marriage, 83 cases, reported dreams of sexual nature. Dreams. Women were sentenced to purification examination for confessing sexual dreams. The youngest recorded penitent was 14 years old, name Anna. Charge. Confession of impure thoughts regarding a stable worker. There is no record of her after her penance date. The oldest was 67, a widow. Charge. Excessive vanity in dress. Her examination lasted 4 days. She survived. Church records note she donated her entire estate to the church afterward. Historians debate whether this was gratitude or coercion. But here is what is not debatable. These were not criminals. They were women, living their lives, then confessing thoughts, or being accused of thoughts, and the church had rooms waiting beneath the sanctuary. Her name was Theodora. Not the Theodora from the chamber. A different one, Empress Theodora, wife of Emperor Theophilos, regent for her son Michael III, ruler of Byzantium from 840 to 856 AD, one of the most powerful women in Byzantine history. And she tried to end it. In 843 AD, 1 year into her regency, Theodora issued an imperial decree. The text survives in the Vienna manuscript of Byzantine legal codes. Henceforth, confession of female sin shall be sufficient for penance. Physical examination of female penitents by male clergy is abolished. Bishops who continue this practice shall be defrocked. Clear, unambiguous, backed by imperial authority. The Patriarch of Constantinople Methodios I refused to promulgate it, not quietly, publicly. He preached against it from the pulpit of Hagia Sophia. His sermon was recorded by court scribes. The Empress, in her feminine mercy, fails to understand. Female truth cannot be spoken, it must be proven. The body conceals what the tongue confesses. To accept mere words is to allow sin to fester unseen. Theodora held power over the state, but the Patriarch held power over the church. For 8 months, they were deadlocked. Then, in December 843, something happened. The details are murky, but the outcome is documented. Theodora's own niece, 17-year-old Pulcheria, was accused of adultery by her husband. He claimed she had been cold to him after childbirth. Under Byzantine law, this was grounds for examination. Theodora tried to intervene, used imperial authority to block it. The Patriarch threatened schism, claimed the Empress was protecting sin, rallied other bishops. Theodora had a choice, her niece or the unity of the church. On January 15, 844, Pulcheria was taken to Hagia Irene. The examination lasted 9 hours. She emerged alive. She never spoke again. Not one word. For the remaining 43 years of her life, medical historians reviewing the case records believe she experienced catastrophic psychological trauma, resulting in selective mutism. On January 16, 844, Theodora rescinded her decree. The official statement: the Empress, in humility, defers to the wisdom of the Church Fathers. 3 days later, she endowed a new monastery. donated 40,000 gold numismata, roughly £800 of gold. The monastery was named Sanctuary of Penitent Women. No men were allowed inside, ever. It still exists, in ruins, outside Istanbul. In 867 AD, Emperor Basil I took power. One of his first acts, ecclesiastical reform, the official record states he purified church practices inconsistent with spiritual dignity. What that actually meant, he ordered the destruction of all documentation related to female penance examinations, not the practice itself, just the paperwork. Diocesan records were burned, training manuals confiscated, budget line items reworded to vague terminology like confessional services, and those chambers beneath churches, sealed, filled in, forgotten. Why the sudden change? Not morality, politics. In 865 AD, Basil's own sister was sentenced to examination. She was a nun, accused by a rival of spiritual pride, which Byzantine law considered a gateway to sexual sin. Basil, still a general at the time, tried to stop it. He failed. His sister died 3 days after her examination, officially fever. 2 years later, Basil was emperor. He did not abolish the practice. That would have required confronting the patriarch, risking schism. Instead, he made it invisible. The practice continued, but documentation ceased. After 867 AD, there are no official records of female penance examinations, but there are hundreds of references in private letters, diaries, family records. Women still disappeared into churches for days. Women still emerged, destroyed. Families still donated estates to churches after their daughters' or wives' penances. But officially, it never happened. By the time the practice actually ended, sometime around 1204 AD, when the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople, there was no documentation to end. It simply faded into silence, and historians, for centuries, had no evidence it ever existed, until they started excavating beneath the churches. Chapter 7 will show you what the archaeologists tried to hide. The Istanbul Archaeological Museum has a restricted storage area. Section K7, climate controlled. No public access. What is inside is known because a curator leaked inventory documents in 2019. She was fired 3 days later. Artifacts from Hagia Irene, never displayed. The list is clinical. Iron restraint rings with biological residue. Female undergarments, torn. Wooden benches with cut marks. Bronze medical instruments. Human bone fragments. Mixed female remains. Mixed meant they could not identify how many women. Personal items were also lobbed. Jewelry, hairpins, a child's toy. One photograph survived. Wedding rings, 17 of them, still engraved with names. Women entered wearing them. They never left with them. The curator, Dr. Yasemin Kos, wrote, "These are not ancient relics. They are evidence of institutional violence. I was ordered to bury them in storage. I refuse." She was fired. The artifacts remain sealed. Not every woman died. Some survived. In 1998, archaeologists found a hidden library in the Monastery of Penitent Women, 63 manuscripts. Testimonies. Restricted access. One belonged to Cassia. Poet. Nun. Survivor. Before the hymns, she was married. Accused. Examined. She lived. Her words written decades later. They destroyed the body. They failed to touch the soul. I am not what they touched. I am what endured. She lived 40 years after the ordeal. Outlived emperors. Outlived patriarchs. Survival was not healing. It was resistance. April 1204. The Fourth Crusade burned Constantinople. Churches were looted. Hagia Sophia gutted. Crusaders found sealed chambers beneath sanctuaries. A knight wrote, "Restraints, blood channels." Priests would not explain. The Crusaders destroyed the buildings. When Byzantines returned, they did not rebuild the chambers. Not because the practice ended, because power had collapsed. By 1300, enforcement faded. Not condemned, just forgotten. In 1453, Ottomans sealed what remained. 500 years later, radar rediscovered them, and suddenly access became restricted. The artifacts exist. The silence is modern. Some call this exaggeration. Rare, legitimate, contextual. The numbers disagree. The charges disagree. And most disagree. The storage rooms disagree. These artifacts exist now. The institutions know. The decision is deliberate. Do not display. Do not teach. Do not explain. This is not medieval cruelty. This is modern concealment. The monastery still stands. Inside the chapel wall are 63 carved names. The survivors, they carved testimony where prayers belonged. This is not lost history. It is hidden history. If this matters, subscribe. Because next, what convents did to women labeled hysterical. The vaults exist. The names exist, and silence only works if we agree to it.